I now recognize our ranking member for his opening statements.
Thank you, Chairwoman Johnson, for holding this markup. Today, we consider 4 pieces of legislation, 3 of which are bills the committee is, as of this moment, unable to reach a bipartisan agreement on. I'm disappointed that we haven't made more progress in reaching a bipartisan consensus, especially since this committee has one of the best track records in Congress of passing productive bipartisan legislation. Now, I want to be clear, these 3 bills are well-intentioned. I believe there's still a chance for bipartisanship in the future. Matter of fact, I expect it. But the fact is, our job in Congress is to set priorities and focus our limited federal funds where we can see the best return on investment. Unfortunately, the bills we'll consider today don't meet that standard. Instead, they offer aspirational funding levels that we simply cannot afford. The first bill we'll consider today is H.R. 3597, the Solar Energy Research and Development Act of 2019. This legislation authorizes solar energy research conducted by the Department of Energy's Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy. EERE received almost $2.4 billion in funding in 2019 and is DOE's largest applied research program. This legislation would authorize approximately $1.5 billion for this work, reaching a 33% total increase in funding from enacted levels by 2024. And while this legislation includes authorizations for some critical research priorities that I support, like innovative energy storage, next-generation solar technologies, and advanced computer capacities, it focuses heavily on expanding the development of technology that already exists. Our second bill this morning is H.R. 3607, the Fossil Energy Research and Development Act of 2019. This bill reauthorizes DOE's energy research and development programs and brings total funding in this area to over $1 billion by FY 2024, a 36% increase from enacted levels. This bill is also singularly focused on emissions control technologies. While those technologies are certainly part of a balanced fossil energy portfolio, there's a lot more work to be done to maximize our nation's fossil fuel resources. Next, we'll consider H.R. 3609, the Wind Energy Research and Development Act of 2019. This authorizes wind energy research conducted under EERE and would provide over $570 million more for this work. This amounts to a 37% increase from levels enacted in 2024. And while I support some elements of this legislation, like basic research in material science, hybrid energy systems, its primary focus, again, is on reducing so-called market barriers for existing wind technologies. I'm thrilled at the growth I've seen in wind and solar industries in the past decade, but American industry is already leading the way in developing these technologies, and we won't discover the next game-changing technology by duplicating their efforts. Finally, the committee will consider H.R. 335, the South Florida Clean Coastal Waters Act of 2019. The legislation requires the Interagency Task Force on Harmful Algae Blooms and Hypoxia to produce an integrated assessment on the causes, consequences, and potential mitigation options to reduce HABs and hypoxia in South Florida. This legislation also calls for the task force to identify the current status and gaps in research, monitoring, and management efforts, develop an action plan for reducing, mitigating, and controlling HABs and hypoxia in the same region. I'm supportive of this legislation, and I want to thank the chairwoman for including it in today's markup. Before I close, I want to make it clear I'm supportive of DOE funding for innovative research that will lead to new solar, wind, and fossil energy technologies. But as stewards of the taxpayers' resources, we must focus funding on projects that are truly cutting edge, those that can't be undertaken by private industry, like basic research in advanced computing, advanced manufacturing, and the development of new materials. Our national debt's $22 billion and rising. We simply can't afford to increase spending in every program, and we'll have to make choices about where we invest. I'd like to take this opportunity to extend an invitation to my good friends across the aisle. There's so much we can agree on. I hope in the future we can take the common sense approach, work together to invest in basic research we all support. And I would offer one final observation to my friends on both sides of the dais. Having been a ranking member and a chairman before on another standing committee, I always reminded all of my friends that the majority has the right and the responsibility to govern, but by the same token, the minority has the right and the responsibility to be heard. And today, we're going to offer suggestions on how to improve these bills. And with that, I yield back the balance of my time. Chairman.